All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Taste of Science stage here at IFT First. I'm Bill McDowell. I'm the editor-in-chief of Food Technology Magazine and the vice president of content and channel strategy here at IFT. We're very glad to have you here for another forward-looking session. If you're working on meat or dairy alternatives, or looking for ways to boost nutrition, functionality, and clean label appeal, yeast-derived proteins and fibers may be one of the most promising tools in your bench. Today's session considers how this underutilized ingredient source is reshaping product development across the food industry. We're spotlighting Lallemand Bioingredients and Mako, which are located over in booth 1234. Lallemand's savory business delivers yeast-based flavor and protein solutions, while Mako Organique specializes in high-purity organic and inorganic salts used in food, pharma, and nutraceutical applications. Joining us now is Bob Villeneuve, who is the Global Sales Director at Lallemand. He's going to walk us through the latest advances in yeast protein innovation and its implications for future formulations. Please join me in welcoming Bob.
Hi there. Oh, sorry. I will not talk that loud. So it's interesting. If you were here for the seminar before, there's sort of a continuing theme about protein and the need for reliable, renewable sources of protein in our food ecosystem. And that's sort of that we're going to carry on that conversation. Very, very briefly, if you don't know who we are, Lallemand, we're a yeast company. So it makes sense that I'm up here talking about yeast protein. Our roots are in baker's yeast. We now have 15 different business units, yeast in all sorts of ways, shapes, and forms that I certainly don't have the time to go into today. But this space of yeast protein is a very exciting space for us. The fact that there's protein in yeast is not news. Chances are every one of you or most of you in the audience already knew that. What we're getting better at is two things. One, we're getting better at getting it extracted in a very condensed format. And two, we're starting to explore ways of using that as a functional product and benefiting from a functional protein, not just the nutritional attributes of it. So I'm going to talk about both of those segments very briefly today. Little bit of data up here. Again, I'm not going to go through it in a ton of detail because I think everyone here in the room knows we need more protein. Whether you use the 2050 marker that comes up in a lot of conversation, we know based on the population trajectory for our planet, we don't have all the solutions we need to provide protein in the future. So we need a robust toolbox. There's not going to be a single solution. We need to have a whole lot of things that work into the mix. Why yeast protein? What are some of the benefits that our product brings? One of them is from an allergen standpoint and a consumer perception standpoint, it's a very clean product. We all know that phrase clean label doesn't really have a definition, but in most applications, yeast on an ingredient list is very well accepted by the consumers. The other big advantage is that when you're looking at alternatives and you're looking at other options for protein, a lot of those decisions are made around available land space, overall impact on the environment, right? And this is where a yeast-based option scores very, very well, not just in the condensed method in which we can manufacture it, but the process itself is largely mechanical, not creating a lot of byproduct that has to be then dealt with. So we're not dealing with any sort of negative attributes after the fact. Little more detail really just around sort of the benefits of yeast as an ingredient. It is such a known and comforting ingredient, but it's also got a relatively circular process. Most yeast that's manufactured is using a byproduct. Molasses is the most common substrate. Corn syrup is another. These are readily available, readily renewable products. The variety of yeast that we're primarily working with is baker's yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, so very well known. I mean, the history of it being consumed by humans goes back further than we've been sort of keeping record of these types of things. So I'm going to get into a little bit, that's sort of the high level of why yeast. And I'm going to talk about some of the product options and explain a little bit about what's in the boxes that were on your seats when you sat down. So I'm going to start by talking about a product that we call Engevita HiPRO Beyond. And this is a relatively simple product, and its beauty is it's in its simplicity. It is 80% protein. So it is a non-functional yeast extract. So it's going to be a white powder. When I say non-functional, I don't mean non-functional from a nutritional standpoint. I mean non-functional from a formulation standpoint in developing product. It doesn't froth, it doesn't thicken, it doesn't gel. So it becomes a very, very easy ingredient to work into a formulation where you're looking to increase your protein delivery. The quality of the protein that it's delivering is incredibly high. It's got all 20 essential amino acids. It's got a PDCAAS score of 1. It matches very, very closely to milk. So as far as a plant-based renewable protein goes, it's really quite a remarkable option to work into the mix. I mentioned a little bit about the ease of working with it. While it's not soluble, we refer to it as being highly wettable. So you can see the product on the screen in the video. Just being introduced to water, it wants to become part of that solution. No agitation, no stirring. It quite easily will work into a lot of wet applications, but it is also a yeast product, so it works great in dry applications as well. Some of the applications that we're seeing in the market already are in seasoning blends. So if you have a crunchy snack and you want to be able to make some sort of a protein claim, it's got a very, very neutral flavor profile. It will deliver a little bit of umami, just like any sort of dried yeast product will. But in general, you can integrate it into an existing seasoning blend with really next to no impact. We're seeing lots of interest in the baking category. We're seeing interest in things like something as simple as a noodle bowl, where you peel back the lid, add hot water, and if you have this yeast integrated into your seasoning pouch, you're now delivering protein in a portable, affordable, and approachable way, right? So that's what gets me excited, right? Is that ability to deliver this in such an easy format. In the little box that was on your seat when you sat down or that you were handed, you'll see a little bit of a chocolate protein shake in there. So that is a plant-based high protein shake. You can see our inclusion rate is just under 13.5%. And really what we wanted to do is sort of really push the envelope at a really high inclusion. We want you to go looking for those yeast off notes, go looking for something, and you're going to see that it delivers really, really a clean flavor. Yeast extracts and yeast products are not often thought of in sweet applications, which is why we kind of chose this. It's a little bit more challenging, but it does sort of show the ability to use this product. Now, we chose to use a plant-based sample because plant-based is not a bad topic to talk about, but we also know that, you know, in the dairy industry, protein fortified products are very popular, so it could be integrated very well into a cow's milk or another animal milk product as well. So I just spent a few minutes talking about how wonderful it is that this is completely non-functional. Now we're going to go to the opposite and talk about functionality. So we have a great relationship with a company out of the Netherlands called Revive, and what they are doing is they're creating 2 high protein yeast products that are functional, that play in the texture space. If you only have 3 floors on the elevator pitch, it's an egg replacer, but I put that in egg quotes because it really is so much more diverse than that. You look at the slide that's up on the screen and just the applications at the bottom where it plays in that texture space, right? It works in gelling, high moisture extrusion, oil and water binding. So there's just so many applications, both in the plant-based and conventional manufacturing. But it has all the same attributes I mentioned before. It comes from that same circular system, very, very low CO2 impact. My favorite, and maybe this is the chef in me, and my first sales roles were in food service. My favorite application that I think is a really exciting space, you see elasticity mentioned down at the bottom. It's got this very, very interesting impact in some cheese. So this is dairy cheese, not plant-based, at really helping to expand that stretch on a low milk fat mozzarella. So the ability for a manufacturer to use a very cost-effective cheese but for their consumer, deliver that really cool TikTokable experience, right, of the really long stretch. I believe, and I've said for a long time, somebody's going to make a lot of money running with this idea, because cheese is a very expensive ingredient, and if you can deliver that performance and that flavor while using a product that's a little bit more economical in your production, you're going to have a very, very popular product. Going back to your sample box, you'll see that in the sample box, there's 2 little containers of a cream cheese spread. What they are is a whipped vegan cream cheese type product. The marketing hat, I can't call it cream cheese because no cheese, but, and we did 2 versions. We kind of went back and forth. You know, in the plain, the unflavored version, we really, really want you to look at how neutral the flavor profile is. So really, you know, enjoy the texture. I like to rub it on put on my tongue and rub it on the roof of my mouth, and you're going to really see how well it binds together, how consistent the product is. You don't have pockets of liquid. Often in a lot of the plant-based cheese alternatives that are out there that are spreadable, when you stir through them, you get a lot of water separation. But if you remember 2 slides ago, we talked about water and oil binding, right? So it really helps with that emulsification while building the texture as well. And then we made an onion and chive as well to just show a slightly more complex formula that it can really play in a lot of different matrix type formulas. 15 minutes is not a lot of time, and I've only used 11, which is almost exactly how I timed it, because I did want to leave a couple of minutes for any questions. However, before I take any questions, please, you know, clearly this is a complex topic. It's not something that in 15 minutes you're going to go, oh, great, let's start buying it. So come by our booth. Really easy number to remember, 1234. And then also, if you visit the startup area, you might see these 3 fine folks sitting in the front that are from Revive. So, does anyone have any questions they'd like me to address that might sort of appeal to everybody in the crowd? Awesome. Well, thank you very much. A tip of the hat to Lynn, who's in the back. She's the one who made all the samples you're trying today. So thank you very much, Lynn, for your help. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bob. And thanks again to Lallemand for helping us envision the future of protein innovation. Do be sure to stop by their booth, 1234, to learn more. Couple quick housekeeping notes. If you bookmarked this session in your IFT app, you'll be getting an invitation in about 10 or 15 minutes asking you to rate and give us some feedback, some comments. Please take a moment to do so. Those comments are very valuable for us to continue to help developing future programming. Finally, over in the corner, you'll see a lucite frame that has a large QR code. Use your app to scan that QR code. On the app, you'll be able to accumulate points. We're going to be having some drawings for some prizes at the end of First. So we want to make sure that you note your attendance on there and collect those prizes. Thanks again to everybody for being here, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day here at First.